signal that it is 6 o'clock. It's the beginning of our meeting. Thank you all for attending and coming. And this is a meeting of the Leominster School Committee. It is February 23rd at 6 o'clock. So I ask that you all stand and join me in a salute to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the convenience of those who wish to attend, not all could attend in person, so we ourselves up to Zoom so people can either participate in the public forum process in person or via Zoom. So we'll start with in person in a minute. The committee represents the needs of all Leominster Public School students and places their interests above all others. We'll exercise leadership, adhere to our protocols, and base our decision upon a reasoned assessment of all available information. We'll advocate for each of our schools and support high-quality public education here in the city of Leominster. Public forum is an opportunity for any member of the audience to speak on a matter specifically listed on the school committee agenda. Speakers will be asked to come to the microphone and state their formal name and address. And not only you don't have to include your actual number of your house, just your name, street that you live at, and the city if it's outside. Well, it doesn't matter, but either way. Each speaker is respectfully asked to keep their comments within a 2-minute time frame. We do have a timekeeper. The committee will not be responding to or answering any questions. First, I'll ask, is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the school committee? Do we have a list?
Yes, we do.
We have a list of those that have already signed up. And we also have a small list thus far for public forum via online. And then at the end, we'll ask if there's anybody interested in speaking that maybe didn't sign up. So
the first one is Michelle Henry.
All right, Michelle. Is Michelle here? The microphone's in front. Okay, next.
Next is Leah Marois.
Leah Marois, if you'd like to come to the podium in the front. Some people might have signed up just saying, I'm here. Just, right? You see the piece of paper, you sign it. Next.
These are online.
Are these online?
Oh, these are online?
He was looking for in person.
I'm looking for in person.
I thought these were in person. The last one is Thomas Leary.
Okay, Thomas Leary.
Yeah, it was an online one.
Okay, go ahead, Thomas.
Oh, perfect. I'll kick it off. Thomas Leary, Comstock Road. Thank you for the time today. Before the school committee votes on masking tonight, we ask that you take all local data into account. Each community's vaccination percentage and positivity rate vary. So it's imperative that we look at Leominster's data and compare it to the state's data. We don't need to compare ourselves to the New Hampshire school districts or what Boston wastewater treatment results show, and certainly not what the European CDC recommends, like was talked about in the meeting last week. We need to look at where we live and what is happening in our community here at Leominster. The vaccination percentages in Leominster schools are low. Previously, just a few weeks ago, the state was recommending an 80% vaccination rate of staff and students to lift mask mandates. Currently, per the nurse leader at last week's masking subcommittee meeting, Leominster High School is only in the mid-50% for vaccinated students and staff. The middle schools are in the 40% range, and elementary schools are very low in the 20% range for both vaccinated staff and students. These numbers are nowhere near an ideal 80% and are low compared to other communities. Secondly, Leominster's positivity rate for COVID is well above that of the state's. Per Leominster Public Schools website today, Leominster's positivity rate is 7.34%, and for the last 14 days, higher than Worcester County at 4.52 and Massachusetts at 4.22. In addition, children under 5 are not yet eligible for vaccination and will be later than originally expected now that Pfizer has pulled its vaccine from the FDA approval. This puts younger siblings or teachers' children at risk, who a student or staff member could spread COVID to from a school exposure. It is too soon to remove masks at schools, as our youngest population deserves the same protection from the virus. And lastly, I leave you with the hypocrisy of our state leaders who are touting that children can remove masks while in school. Our State House just reopened their doors after 2 years, which was the last state house in the country to reopen. It is now requiring proof of vaccination or a negative test and universal masking within the building. Clearly, Massachusetts is much more cautious when it comes to COVID protocols for our leaders, Why are they not protecting our children in the same way? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We can,
Why don't we do those that are here, and then that
Sure.
might allow us to reconnect with those that maybe signed up for online.
okay.
So is anyone here who would like to speak to the school committee? If so, there's a little wood podium up front, and name and address, no number, just address. Thank you.
Sword.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Daniel Fenner. I reside in Leominster in Ward 3. The last member that just spoke actually brought up a good point, a lot of hypocrisies. I was at a loss for words when I saw masking on this week's agenda. When the masking debate happened before DESE guidelines, members of this school committee made comments stating that they wish this decision wasn't placed on local school committees. Well, DESE lifted the mandate and gave the decision-making back to the parents. I plead that you leave it that way. To reiterate how unfit the school committee is to make any further mask decisions, I want to point out a couple of hypocritical events. At one meeting, a member had a 6-minute rant on why masks should be forced onto children. When the following meeting, the same member attended with a homemade cloth mask under his chin for at least 10 minutes before the meeting began. When the meeting started, he lifted the mask to barely cover just his mouth. That same member did that exact same thing when I walked in this evening. Had the mask underneath his nose. When the meeting started, he lifted the mask just barely cover his mouth. It wasn't until I pointed out his hypocrisy that he actually fixed it and put it over his nose. And again, tonight he did not do that until everybody started walking in. Prior to the recent local election, 3 school committee members stood within arm's reach, unmasked, and had an open debate that lasted close to 30 minutes. Yet when attending school committee meetings, these same members wear masks throughout the length of the meeting. Hypocritical. I've also seen multiple pro-mask school committee members in different confined public establishments without masks, without masks while laughing and enjoying life completely mask-free. Again, hypocritical. So which is it? Actions speak louder than words. You were elected to represent the parents. The vast majority of parents don't want major mental and physical health decisions being forced onto their children. Stop the hypocrisy and give power back to the parents. They voted you into these seats for a reason. Listen to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, if there's anyone else who would like to address the committee, please feel free to step up. I know more than one person showed up here tonight to speak to the school committee, so don't be shy.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Monica Gibbons. I'm a 1991 graduate of Leominster High School. I'm a mom of school-aged children. I work as a music therapist and mental health counselor. I would like to address the mental health crisis that I am seeing in kids caused by the masking, lockdowns, and distancing. Anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation have skyrocketed. Across our country, teenage girls are attempting to end their own lives at staggering rates, driving a 50.6% increase in girls being admitted to hospitals for suspected suicide attempts. This study likely underrepresents the real number of suspected suicide attempts because Americans have been hesitant to go to the hospital. The ongoing stress, fear, grief, and uncertainty have weighed heavily on our children and teens. Extended mask wearing has shown negative psychological harms tied to lack of facial and emotional signaling. Supporters of masks claim they save lives and stop COVID. Yet thousands of scientists, medical professionals, and epidemiologists have been accumulating data that show masks are harmful both short-term and long-term. According to professors of medicine at Johns Hopkins and Tufts University, facial expressions are integral to human connection, particularly for young children who are learning how to signal fear, confusion, and happiness. Covering a child's face mutes these nonverbal forms of communication and can result in robotic and emotionless interactions, anxiety, and depression. Seeing people speak is a building block of phonetic development. It is especially important for children with disabilities. A recent observational study of 25,930 mask-wearing children in Germany showed headaches in 53%, difficulty concentrating in 50%, joylessness in 49%, learning difficulties in 38%, and fatigue in 37%. 25% had new onset anxiety and nightmares. Parents tell me that their kids feel like they're full of germs. Okay, just want to finish.
Go ahead, just wrap it up.
Okay. Parents tell me their young kids feel like they're full of germs and that everyone else is full of germs. A recent report finds that wearing masks more than 4 hours a day decreases cognitive precision, increases headaches and sweating, and encourages dehydration, and increases bacterial infection risk. Lastly, I want to tell you of one of my clients, a 7-year-old boy.
In fairness, we have to.
Okay, this is the very last part.
In the best part.
Okay.
But in fairness, if you go over, we're just gonna have, other people can do
Sure.
that. This could go on all night.
Okay,
And then around 11 or 12 tonight, we're gonna have to make a decision on this.
I know. I'm sorry. This is the very last part. One of my clients, a 7-year-old boy who looked at me last week and said, "It is so hard wearing the mask all day. I get in trouble if I pull it down for a minute to catch a breath. I can't breathe in it. When is this going to stop?" Thank you.
All right, thank you.
My name is Jessica. I live on Baldwin Court in Leominster.
Hi, Jessica.
So our kids sit shoulder to shoulder in crowded lunchrooms, maskless every day. They then leave the school and go to non-school sports, concerts, large sporting events, grocery stores, big box retailers, malls, movie theaters, gyms, restaurants, and each other's houses, all maskless every single day, many of them for nearly 2 years now, only to return to school the next day incorrectly wearing a mask. Is COVID-19 only in schools now? I've constantly heard follow the science 100 times a day for the past 2 years. Well, over the past 2 years, as this virus has mutated and we have learned more, why on earth would we not follow the new science as new information has come out? I understand teachers were polled and 44% want to keep masks. They can. No one is saying make it so people can't wear masks. Science is showing one-way mask wearing can be effective. The following is an excerpt from an opinion piece in the Washington Post from January 25th. This was written by the 3 following doctors named Shira Doran, Weston Elliman, and Alyssa Perkins. Shira Doran is an infectious disease physician at Tufts Medical Center. Weston Elliman, also an infectious disease physician, is an associate professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School. Alyssa Perkins is an associate professor of emergency medicine and the director of emergency medicine of infectious disease management at Boston Medical Center. And sorry, I'm just trying to read it all quickly. This is the article they wrote. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention updated its guidance on masks this past week, stating that respirators such as N95s are more protective than surgical masks, which in turn protect better than cloth masks. These updates are appropriate from a scientific standpoint. They also offer a pathway to compromise in the place where policies are most hotly debated, schools. Respirators and other high-quality masks are effective at protecting their wearers regardless of what the people around them are doing. The old mantra, "my mask protects you and your mask protects me," is now obsolete. As a result, schools can finally safely make masks optional for students and staff.
Your 2 minutes is up.
Say that again?
Your 2 minutes is
Go
up.
ahead, like 10 more seconds. I just want to say, I understand that that's an opinion piece, but I think we can all agree those doctors' credentials speak for themselves. So if we're going to keep saying follow the science, let's follow all of the science.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. And then whoever wants to speak next. You can head to the podium so that way we're making good use of that in this time.
My
Yes.
name is Danae Newhouse. I live on 2nd Avenue. Good evening. I speak to you today as a student who has spent the majority of her high school career under the mask mandate and is beyond exhausted. I have experienced multiple teachers state that they do not believe the masking policy, as students are already sharing desks, supplies, food, and some even vapes and other paraphernalia, so masking is not necessary for preventing COVID. And I agree with them. There are more pressing matters such as the drug epidemic that is plaguing schools instead of forcing every student to wear a mask. My experience attending Leominster High School, the staff are clearly exhausted trying to constantly police students in every corner of the building. And when 20+ students are forced to squeeze together in the front of the building for being a minute late in the morning so that they can be marked tardy, masking is not doing anything to stop the spread of COVID. Let it also be known that many students reuse their masks every day, so the effectiveness is already brought into question. The aspect of wearing a mask, is a minor inconvenience when said, but putting it into the context of having to walk up the school and going up multiple staircases and being pushed against other students, it takes it to another level. The mask restrictions The masks restrict the amount of oxygen a student has. Students such as myself with breathing handicaps like asthma are suffering even more as they try to go through 6 hours a day exhausted and unable to properly breathe. In my school life, I am constantly winded trying to get from class to class, even more so with classes that are very far apart and I only have a few minutes to get across the school. Staff members are regularly seen with their mask below their nose or off completely, but this is not an option for us students. A student cannot walk 3 feet without being told to reposition their mask as it's for the safety of the people all around them. But this is not the case for staff members. If removing this mandate is so detrimental to the health of so many, then why does our very principal not follow this protocol? I can name numerous instances in which he and other staff members nonchalantly converse without masks. Why is it that the staff have a greater leniency on the masking policy, but it is shameful for a student to remove it?
Your 2 minutes is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. And then the next speaker, right behind one another. I don't have any music to play between those that wish to speak, so.
My name is Teresa Hoggins.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi, mother of 5.
Welcome.
Thank you. I just want to say that the Omicron variant poses close to zero risk of death for healthy students. Again, I want to say the Omicron variant, which is the predominant variant that we're seeing now for healthy students, causes statistically 0 deaths. So I ask you, for the past 2 years, we have really been trying to protect people's physical health. But as the woman said earlier, the mental health of our students has been negatively impacted. And I think that taking the masks off, or at least making masks optional, will help our kids, especially with their mental health that has suffered so much the past 2 years. And again, there's, for healthy kids, about a 0 risk of death, or statistically 0 risk of death. It's time to take the masks off, or at least make the mask optional for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Next speaker. One more time. Yes, sir. Perfect timing.
Hi, my name's Joe Mnasc, Leominster, Mass. I'd like to question and see if everyone here recognizes the fact of what doctors have always pushed on, well, from one doctor to another, and following the fact that they first say, first do no harm. We have done great harm, as evidenced by people speaking tonight, to our students. We have not, as other speakers have said, it's evident that Omicron variant is not what they sell on television or the mass media, which is a shark bite. This is a bite without teeth. And the death toll, the scare, everyone knows by firsthand, it is not what we've experienced in this city. As far as masking goes, I worked in construction for over 20 years, wearing N95 masks with other painters, plasterers on job sites. And we still see the same thing every time. We see a little curl of dust that goes around the nostril. This is not a whole full, how would I say, filtration. If you want to see a full filtration to happen, you would have to go to a hospital where they have a mask that has valves that open for the exhaust, where you don't get hypoxia, where all the students have had. And they're also blocking the eye so that you cannot get a virus that would contaminate and stick to the eye from the negative charge that's on a wet eye. So we're fooling ourselves to think that a mask is truly working. In closing, I think I have to say thank you to everyone that's standing up here, making this known. We have followed a political science, not the real science. The CDC put out in 2019 that masks have an effective rate of 0.7%. That's less than 1%. Why have we not listened to that before this all went down? Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Next speaker, please. Good evening.
My name is Jean Robby. I just want to let you know, December 17th, 2019, the NCSL stated third grade is the most critical time for children to be learning. When you have children who are in elementary school from kindergarten to third grade and their mouths are like this, they cannot decipher between P and B. So they are not learning. We now have 4 years of trying to catch kids up to get past the third grade because it is so crucial. In third grade, if they don't learn to read, they cannot read to learn. It is very important. You are doing an injustice to your teachers, your educators, who are trying so hard to get these kids. Right now, they're trying to get the third graders caught up. And they are facing an almost impossibility. You have no idea what you're doing to these children. They need that facial recognition to learn. It is time to end this. They're not protecting them at all. They're doing more harm. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Cynthia Key, State Street, Leominster. So currently, the CDC is recommending indoor masking when there are 50 or more positive cases per day per 100,000 residents. And the 14-day % positive rate is 10% or above. So some stats for our area. Leominster was 40 per 100,000 and 7.34%, as I think the first online commenter stated. Fitchburg was 41 and 7.81%. Lunenburg 26 and 5.09%, Sterling 23.6 per 100,000 and 3.6%, and Lancaster at 19 per 100,000 and 3.58%. So you can see that Leominster and our surrounding communities are all within the guidelines to drop masks indoors per the CDC. These numbers are as of February 17th. They've only improved over the last week. The Mass DESE feels that it's time. 70 of other districts in Massachusetts also agree, and including our neighboring Fitchburg. So it's been 2 years, what people are saying. These kids, some of them have never known school without a mask. It's so sad. They are losing out. Their development, their mental health, it's all a problem. And it could take these kids through the rest of their lives. So, sorry, I kind of lost my place, went off a little bit there. So it's time. We have to let our kids be free and drop this mandate now, not in 2 weeks, not in a month, just it needs to be done.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Jessica, 21 Autumn Hill, Leominster. We regret that this matter has come to this. However, our children are our first priority, and we will never stop fighting for their rights. This is our informal notice of the intent to file a claim against your risk management plan. We have not asked that you prohibit masks, but instead allow them to be optional at the parent's discretion. I am here to let you know that we are prepared to file the claim if you continue to take our medical rights away for our children. You are all in violation of some federal and Mass state laws, and it's apparent that I don't have time to go over all of them with you tonight. Mayor, with all due respect, I do have a paper for you that will be filed at City Clerk's office tomorrow, along with a copy of over 100 signatures of people that are backing up this claim. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Once again, one last time. No other speakers? Yes?
I'd like to go.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, I'd like to, I'm Phil, I'm a college student. I'd like to open with a couple quotations.
You're Phil at college student.
Yeah.
What's your address? You don't have to give
Mechanic Street.
Thank you.
I would like to start with a quote from the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights of 2005. In Article 6, it states, any preventive, diagnostic, interactive medical intervention is only to be carried out with the prior free and informed consent of the person concerned based on adequate info. The person should, when appropriate, may withdraw at any time without discrimination and prejudice. I would also like to read a quote by Thomas Paine. The greatest tyrannies are always perpetrated in the name of noblest causes. The greatest tyrannies are perpetrated in the name of noblest causes. And I'd also like to mention that what has gone on for the last 2 years, it doesn't matter if you abdicate responsibility to DESE, to the state, to the federal government, or to any other power. At the end of the day, anyone who's seated right here is responsible for the mental, social, emotional health and academic failure that has gone on for the last 2 years in any of these students. This is absolutely evil, criminal, ungodly, un-American, and a fraud in every sense of the word. I would like to also parrot a quote from Booker T. Washington, in which he states, "A lie doesn't become truth. Wrong doesn't become right, and evil doesn't become good just because it's believed by a majority." I'd like to repeat it one more time. A lie doesn't become truth. Wrong doesn't become right, and evil doesn't become good just because it's accepted by a majority. Please respect your students, teachers, and staff because they know a whole lot better than DESE, the federal government, the CDC, and the World Health Organization.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address the committee? Once again, one last time.
And so you're going to go to the people online before?
We're going to go back to online.
My name is Caleb Roberts. Autumn Hill. I'm a student at Leominster High School, and I believe we should get rid of the mess and leave it up to the parents' decision. We've been doing this for 2 years now, almost going on 3, and nothing has changed. It's time to change. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Once again, one last time. If not, we'll move on back to online and see if there's anyone online that would like to address the committee.
Tracy, State Street, Leominster.
I'm sorry, what's your name? Could you do that one more time?
Tracy, State Street, Leominster.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
I just want to say that I have 2 children in the Leominster school system. I have one that goes to Johnny Appleseed and another one that is at Francis Drake Elementary School. He's there, he has autism, and when this first started, it was extremely hard for him. I had to actually utilize mobile crisis, and it was just a very bad struggle. And now that schools are open, he is finally doing better and progressing. His teachers, everyone are just so proud of the progress they're making. And I just ask that you keep in mind the kids that had a really hard time being out of school. Not too long ago, my son's classroom was shut down and I was not reached out to. I was left to my own devices for at least 3 days. I finally reached out. I was able to get him on. And my daughter, just last week, had to stay home from school, and I got absolutely no guidance from her school until her father finally reached out to ask about Valentine's Day. So I ask that you please consider what's best and what keeps kids in school, not out of fear. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on the line who would like to address the school committee?
I would like to speak.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Leah. I'm on Ice House Road.
Yes.
Thank you for taking the time for these calls and to open up this to the public. I would just like to state that my daughter's in elementary at Johnny Appleseed. And she does come home and she's just, Mommy, I can't breathe through this mask. I was hot today. I am a nurse and I do understand the importance of masks, but no one's using the masks correctly. They're intended for a one-time use in and out of precaution rooms, and then you discard it. They're not being used correctly. And I do agree with the previous speaker regarding the B and D and P pronunciations. She's having a hard time with basic reading, and her test scores that they do routinely did drop in reading aspects. We are doing what we can at home to help her with reading and enunciation. But again, she goes to school to be taught by teachers. And the vaccination status as well. I hope that this isn't a factor of continuation of mask use in school. As we've all seen, the long-term efficacy of the vaccinations has not been studied enough, and people have been positive whether they were boosted or had the full series of vaccinations or not vaccinated with this latest Omicron variant. So I would just like to advocate for my child and get rid of the masks. Thank you.
Thank you. She actually came in so clear, I thought she was sitting here. Jenna sounded better than all of us. Anyone else out there?
I would like to speak.
Yes, go ahead, your name, please.
I'm Zachary Baldridge. I'm a student at Samoset Middle School.
Hi, Zachary.
The CDC has said that natural immunity is the best way to protect against a virus. So I feel as we drop the masks or make them optional, we can get the virus and get the immunity and move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the committee? Anybody else online that would like to address the committee? One more time. Okay, if not, we'll close this portion of the meeting. Thank you to all of our speakers. We'll now go to communications. Superintendent.
There are no communications this evening?
No communications. We'll now go to superintendent's report.
There is not a superintendent report this evening.
All right. We're moving right along.
There we go.
All right, next is update on a mask policy. And this went to subcommittee, correct? It was referred to subcommittee. So it's the chair, did you pick a chair of the subcommittee? All right. So the chair, let us kind of give us a brief.
Sure. So there were two, we kind of broke it down into two things. We've had two policy subcommittee meetings. So one meeting really focused on what date we would end masking. And we did take a vote based on information that we received from the head of the Department of Public Health in Leominster, as well as our lead nurse here at our school district. And we had a vote of 3-1 in favor of lifting the mask on March 11th would be the last day of wearing masks, due to the thought that if there's been upticks of COVID after vacations, and this would give enough time for that to kind of resolve itself and people not to be sort of at risk coming back who've been affected during vacation. The second piece is coming up with a new masking policy, and that's what we primarily focused on today. And Chris is going to be sending us a draft policy. We're going to have another meeting on March 7th to go over that draft policy to incorporate some things that we've discussed today. But basically we'll be following primarily the Mnasc policy on masking. And so what this means for the general public is that if and when we do need masking, there will be a policy in place. It does not mean that people need to mask when we make that decision when we're ending masking. However, it will have caveats, and all of this is, it would be a choice of parents, teachers, students, staff. If they choose to mask, that would be their option, but that people would not be mandated to mask unless we really talked about, obviously we have to follow federal, state, DESE, city, mandates and things like that. But this would be just a policy that we will have in our book in case masking is needed at a future event. So we will bring that forward at our next meeting.
Okay, so how we'll handle this, that is the I think the synopsis of what happened during the two meetings. And so in order for us to take any action at all, someone would have to make a motion. You could have dual motions. We vote on each of the motions, and then we have discussion. So
we would have discussion after it's
correct.
First and second.
Are we having a presentation?
Right. I mean, we were hoping to get some information from the Department of Public Health. I know it's here because that may change people's opinion or votes.
Were you prepared to come and speak or something tonight, Jeff?
If people have specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Okay. So that's why I said, why don't we, if there's somebody that wants to make a motion, we might have 2 or 3 different motions. And we will have discussion on each of the motions and then take a final vote.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to the full school committee to drop the mask mandate on February 28th.
Okay, so we'll have discussion now.
So Dean, I would not be prepared to vote on it unless I hear the recommendation from the Department of Public Health Director.
Well, I think what he said is if you have any specific questions, you can answer those. I guess that's like a presentation. So whatever questions, he's here as a resource for the school committee for any questions that you might have.
So my understanding was after our policy meeting was that Jeff was going to give a similar presentation to what he gave to policy so that the committee as a whole had a full understanding of how he arrived at that decision.
Well,
and I guess I would be interested in knowing whether his position has changed. He was recommending the 2-week extension of masking due to the concern that there would be an uptick in exposure and COVID positives. So I guess I would want to know if that still stands. At the time, Leominster was in the 10% or over 10% positivity rate. That has dropped since our meeting. So I don't know whether that has shifted anything or not. So I would be curious to just get some input.
So like January 19th, we were like 17, almost 1,800 cases.
Correct.
In 14 days, we're down to 200 and something. Is that what it is?
Actually, our numbers came in today. We had 185.
So we're down even more significantly. And then the first speaker had mentioned something about the vaccination rate in schools. But when I get that sheet every day, it's much higher than that. Except for the kids that are 5 years and that 0 to 5 year old, the vaccination rate is higher.
So the school age kids don't have as high a vaccination rate as our population.
Right, well, because they didn't become eligible for it until later on.
Right, and there may be school kids that go to other districts, right, which just they represent a number in Leominster, but maybe not our district itself. And there's not an easy way to parse that out. It's just the resident. Our numbers at the high school are around 55%. Our numbers at the elementary schools are much lower. Part of that is due to the fact that the vaccine is still fairly new for 5 to 11-year-olds. So in time, I would like to hopefully see that.
All right, hold on. If we've already allowed everyone a chance to come up and speak, so just, I know everyone's tired about this subject, they're emotional about it, but just let us do our work here and have our discussion, and then when it's over, you can stay here as long as you want. I'll lock the doors.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, well, can you give me that, Wendy, you know that sheet I get every morning? Can you just give me a copy of it? Because the numbers are much higher when you look at the ages.
I agree.
And I didn't get an answer to my question either. So.
what was the
I
question?
was asking, was there any change in his position, given that the positivity rate has decreased since our last meeting, because it was at a very different place at that time? So I was not sure if it was a decision.
I would ask the superintendent the same question, because she gave a position and it might have changed.
You first.
My position stays the same. I'm looking for an additional 9 days of schools.
It's all about the
Just
money.
2 weeks, slow spread.
All right, Phil, come on, everybody, you couldn't get up, you get up to 2 minutes, we all listened.
Pittsburgh had 4 hours.
Nobody said one word while you speak, nobody, for or against, we all let you speak. And we let you go over, you only need 8 seconds someday. All right, superintendent,
So although I'd love to wrap every child up in bubble wrap, we are now putting much more of this onus on the families. We've talked to our staff. The majority would like to unmask starting on the 28th. Our percentage rate now tonight, Jeff and I were just talking, we're down to 5.8. I would be in favor of an option on February 28th and move forward. This is very difficult for the schools to manage. Our nurses are exhausted. Everyone's exhausted, trying to pull the mask up over the nose. We will still have all materials on the premise for anyone that wants to mask. I know the 2 weeks would be nice. It's just going to be a very difficult road for us. Yes, Melissa?
next, Melissa.
So, obviously, I tend to be in the more mask conservative group. And I heard from a lot of parents who are nervous about publicly speaking.
Correct.
And have immunocompromised children, or children that are under the age of 5. So my question would be, regardless of what date we drop the mask mandate, what is the policy going to be, or do we have a procedure for families that want or demand, essentially, that their young child specifically, not high school age kids, that want their young child to be masked?
They can mask.
Right, but if it's a 5 or a 6-year-old.
Correct.
We know, right?
So we have a lot of measures in place, and we've worked with a lot of families. Since our last discussion, there were some vulnerable spots, I would say, places that we tend to really rely on masking. We have other provisions besides masks. We have our plastic shields. We have our drapes. We're willing to do whatever the comfort level is. We've been doing this for 2 years. We could build a school out of PPE and fill the walls. I think at this point, we're trusting our parents. They're communicating with us. I've heard both sides. This isn't an easy task, but I have to trust our families right now to do the right thing. And whatever students need, they'll tell me. They've been telling me. So if students need a little more plexiglass, okay, we'll get that, whatever it's going to take. Some classrooms, we do have children who are severely compromised. Those classrooms are working as communities by themselves to say, hey, we're going to continue to do this. So anything that a classroom would need at this point, we will make sure that we provision that. But I do trust our families to do the right thing. We're testing at home. We're asking them to mask. We have all of these in place. If ever there was a time with a 5.8 rating, it's going to happen either Monday or 2 weeks from Monday. And if we see a spike, we're going to address it. We had the spike with masks. I'm hoping it's not going to be bad today. So today I'm feeling a little bit better with the fresh air. We were outside. It felt good to be outside and open windows. And that's where we need to get back to.
So this is what I was referring to, is we get this weekly Leominster vaccination update. 12 to 15 years old, well, 5 to 11 years old, 45% of the city has been vaccinated. 12 to 15 years old, 83%. 16 to 19 years old, 93%. So where does that come from?
So those numbers come out of the state.
Right.
And people within house are going by what they're getting reported to them on their vaccine rates within the schools. So we're using our own data on where those numbers are. Our teachers are very well vaccinated, their numbers are high. It appears that our students are a lot lower.
But you gave different numbers than what I have here. And I thought these are the numbers that come from you.
Those numbers I get from the state, and that represents the entire community,
So,
not just the school district.
Right, so 12 to 15 years old, if you're 12 to 15, 83% of the city is vaccinated of that population.
I believe that's 83% is one shot, or has at least one shot. I don't know if it's fully vaccinated.
And then 16 to 19 is 93%. Okay, anyway. Yes, Joe.
I have some comments to make. It's specifically to the vaccination rate. If you look at it from school to school, it's different. So to say that blanketly, you can't say that teachers are more vaccinated than students. I know two of my children attend Samoset, and there are more students vaccinated than staff. That's fine. It's a personal choice. In my opinion, it's a personal choice. The school has put in place tons of procedures to test, tons of procedures to take kids out and have them go home, right? We know the guidelines to send people home and when they can come back. Jesse gave us advice or their updated mandate to drop the mask, but also create a culture of mask acceptance for the people who want to wear masks, right? So I think that's on us to make sure that if they want to wear masks, that they can, and like the superintendent said, we'll provide those masks and anything they need to feel safe. Right? I don't see us doing this every time we have a school break. We have one coming up in April. Are we going to sit around this table and talk about putting masks back on for a couple of weeks? Are we just going to keep doing it over and over again? I'm with the 28th.
Mr. Ron, give everybody a chance to speak or ask questions once and then we'll go around. Okay.
The thing we have to realize.
Can you get closer to your mic, Ron?
It is. The thing we have to realize, it's not the mask that's killing people. It's the virus. The virus is not human. So all the angst we have, all the anger we have is against the virus. And we have to remember that. My colleague Way was saying, are we going to be doing the same thing come April? We don't know what the future predicts for us. That's the part that's very dangerous. The virus doesn't care if we're tired. As I said, the virus is not human. All the virus wants to do is feed on us. And remember that.
All right, excuse me.
That's
No,
it.
just please, everyone.
No, it's okay.
No,
I expect to hear that.
I want us to debate this and we
I
can
know,
debate
but
it
you know,
after.
they
But
want
now-
to
Go ahead,
go
go ahead,
back
Ron.
in, no
Go
problem.
ahead, Ron.
But you all have to realize, we have a physical responsibility for ourselves and our family. We face the possibility, unfortunately, of becoming proverbial typhoid Marys. Look at everyone here in the audience. Look at the mirror tonight. Ask yourself, are you going to become a typhoid Mary? That's what we're facing. You can laugh at me. Go ahead.
No, come on.
These poor children are right.
But that's fine. Excuse me, come on. Let's, I know, if we keep doing this all night, I'm not letting anyone leave. You're staying here till the end of the meeting. All right? So that's the deal. And this is going to go on for a long time. You'll miss Jeopardy and whatever else is on TV. I don't watch it, but you'll miss it all.
I just wanted to make sure that folks are aware that no matter when we stop masking, there is still a mandate for children to wear masks on the bus and in the school nurse, and that's nurse's office, and that at this point not something under our purview that we can change because that's still a mandate that's being handed down. So I just wanted for folks to know that that's still an issue. And I guess whenever we stop masking and give people the choice, I really expect the school system to follow our policy on bullying if students are bullied or staff are bullied if they choose to wear a mask.
Or bullied not to wear a mask.
So I would really expect for us to be following our bullying policy, and I hope that that doesn't happen for anybody for any reason. But I just want to be clear that we do have a policy about that, and if we're moving towards choice, it needs to be a choice that people respect, no matter what side of the fence you fall on.
Brandon, did you have something? I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate Jeff and the superintendent sharing their their opinions as they currently stand. Feel very conflicted about the decision before us tonight. I do want to share some serious concerns that I have, regardless of when we decide to drop this. If we do make a decision to push it 2 weeks, I worry about our teachers having to be police officers and fighting the fight of you need to have a mask on. Well, my parents said I didn't need to wear a mask. So I do have some serious concerns about that, and I think that needs to be part of our decision-making process going forward.
Let me say this, right? You just try to frame this. There's nobody here in this that's on the school committee, works in the schools, parents, and wants to see anybody get sick, right? I mean, if you've lost a family member or somebody you know, nobody wants that. If you've been sick, I know I hear people all the time like, yeah, nothing happened. I don't know about that, but some people have gotten few symptoms and other people have gotten hit hard with it. So I think we can all agree on the fact that nobody wants anybody to get this virus, right? I mean, we can agree on that. Secondly, I think we can agree on the fact that not everybody wears these things correctly and that we use them long after the warranty is up. So I see all the time here at City Hall, supermarket, done it myself, see the sign on the door, I'm out of town, see a sign on the door, trying to get a water, I run in, mandatory mask, go back to my car, thought I had one in my pocket, start fishing through, guarantee you that mask probably was ready for the dumpster. So, let's take that into consideration, that what goes on. The other piece of this is, that I've noticed is that people have a mandatory mask policy in their business or wherever, industry, whatever. But they don't have any toilet paper, they don't have hot water, they don't have soap, they don't have paper towels or a wig. I'm more concerned with that. So I know if I go to my doctor's office or I go to St. Vincent's or I go to Mass General, they don't even want to talk to you about my mask. This is my grandmother made this for me. They don't want to hear it. You get a fresh mask, you get a fresh mask when you go inside. Why is that? Because they don't know how long that mask has been with you and how effective it is. So they're assuming that it's not effective. And I think we have enough PPE for those who want to wear a mask. I think one of our policies ought to be, you come into the school and you want to wear a mask, got to be a fresh mask, or at least offer them that. And also make sure that we keep our standards up in terms of it. And I know it can get hard, but in terms of keeping our buildings clean, keeping PPE for those that choose to use it, but just basic sanitation that we lost pre-pandemic that I'm starting to see come back now. Like all of a sudden, it's like people that, at one time everybody's on top of it, now it's people starting to slip on. That's everyday stuff. So that paper towels and soap in a restroom, pretty much yesterday's technology. So I know people are tired. It's been, hey, remember at the beginning of this, 2 weeks, we're going to lock everything down, everybody hide from each other. Then it was, if you got it, you had to go somewhere else, sleep with the dog outside, or get a hotel room 6 states away, or sleep out in the tent. People are exhausted. They close businesses, restaurants, kids with masks. Although, my own observation is kids do pretty good with this stuff. I have a hard time. I'll be honest with you. I have a really hard, you want to talk about anxiety? I've been in buildings that the nearest exit to get a break is a half a mile, it seems like, in some of these convention centers. And I'm running around trying to keep this thing on. Pop. But kids do pretty well. I have to give kids a lot of credit. I watch them. It's like automatic to a lot of these kids, but not to every kid. I understand. It's not every student. But all the events that we had here today, it wasn't required. We just keep people distance. Kids came in and popped the mask on. I don't know how old the mask was. Some kids do well. Clearly, I think everybody can agree some kids haven't. Some students, this has really put them behind. and if you're anxious, it's harder to learn. And we as a committee just want to do the right thing, right? We're not bringing our own personal agenda, but we don't want to see one kid get sick, not one teacher, nothing. We just want to do the right thing. And so we're just as confused sometimes with all the information that you hear. Every day there's another expert telling us, yeah, no, we're confused. Doctor this, doctor that, doctor of this, somebody bought their doctor's certificate online. It just goes on and on. Everybody's an expert and everybody's tired. That we can all agree on. It's very confusing. And as I started to say from the beginning, nobody wants to see anybody sick and we don't need it. So we just want to make the right decision. I think New Hampshire tonight, I just saw this come through tonight. And I'm going to share this with you just because it came through. Hopefully I took a picture correctly. They going to return optional mask policy March 14th, positive cases in any school exceeds 3% of the school population. Then the school exceeding the 3% will return back to a mask mandate for 10 days. And that just creates more confusion. And this has been nothing but confusing. And it's made enemies out of people, and teachers have become disciplinarians about masks, pull the thing off. I think, just so everybody here understands, whatever your belief is, we just want to make the right decision. That's our job, is to make the right decision for students. We're not experts. We reach out. We have the same sources you do. We belong to National Association of School Committees, Mass Association of School Committees. We get hit from every different direction. And I can be honest with you, you read one editorial, you get news alert, and you put COVID-19, and all day long, things come into the contrary. Nobody agrees. And so it's very difficult. We just want to make the right decision. So we have a motion right now and a second that when we go back, we return back to school, that this is a parent and a family decision. And I might also say that from what I've heard from people who have a physical condition, they feel better with those. I used to think it's like I couldn't wear one of those all day, but they have better luck, it seems, with those shields. And we offer those. Yes. And after a while, I guess, for the people that work in medical industry and everything, say, if you're a dentist, they've been using them for years, they're more comfortable with those. That's almost 100% effectiveness, I think. So so the motion on the floor was to eliminate the mandatory masks policy. Yes. Effective February 28th.
And just to add, I forgot to add that MIAA, for anybody who's playing sports, we still have to follow their guidelines, and those, continue to change.
Right. So there are going to be organizations
so
that
I
have some
just want-
affiliation.
Like if you want to play high school sports, you
Right.
still have to follow MIAA. And
So there are
like
things
I
that are
said,
beyond
they
our
continue to get
control,
revised.
right? That aren't in our control, such as, say, the Boys and Girls Club, if they decide that their policy is to continue to wear them. We can only do what we have the authority to. Yes, Melissa.
So I still lean toward a March 14th policy because my concern is, we've talked about the mental health of our kids, and I want our kids to stay in school. And I also, when our kids take masks off, I want them to be able to stay off. I can't imagine the trauma our kids have been through having to re-mask again. And I think there's going to be a bump after February vacation. And I'd like us to know whether that bump is from February vacation or whether it's from unmasking. I would be in support of changing it to February 28th if we can also require that kids who are symptomatic and do not have a doctor's note have to mask in school if they're symptomatic.
What about if they test and return with a negative test?
That I would be fine with. It's my understanding that not a lot of families have opted into the symptomatic testing.
What's that?
Only a third of the families are
Right,
participating in the testing.
So if we do that, we're going to go back to what the superintendent said, so chasing around symptoms and trying to police that, we're taking a step back.
We're behaving, we're performing exclusionary practice.
Ideally, if parents took and their children were honest and did it on their own, there would be no policing. I mean, that's what your hope would be.
So why
that
don't
if
we
your child
lean
is
towards that?
symptomatic, you either keep them at home or have them back.
Mr. Craig. go
Yeah,
ahead.
so
You've sat here patiently.
I'm trying. So, I want us to start moving towards this scenario of an endemic. And how do we treat kids who are symptomatic in school before the pandemic? So if a child shows that they have a fever, if they have, sore throat or things like that, things that the teacher feels is problematic to the rest of the class, they take the child out of the class and send them to the nurse. I think we need to go back towards that kind of process and policies in which we follow. I'll go off course a little bit here and reiterate kind of what Josh said, which is it creates a huge burden. And I think that, as far as the bump with the vacation, what is the metric? Throughout this pandemic, I've asked so many times when is it safe? What is that number? What are these things that we need to get to? Nobody's actually been able to provide that. So at this point, we have to make decisions on our own, and it's sad, but I just want to say that listening to the one of the students speak, the girl there, the mental health, and I've seen the statistics about adolescent girls and the suicide rates, attempted suicide rates going up by 51%. That's scary. And to hear the kids talk and to hear what they're saying and what they're not saying, it's exhausting. And I'm just, these kids have been asked to protect adults for so long, and them being the ones, it's time for the kids to be safe. It's time for the kids to be kids again. We just need to get kids back to feeling like they are safe. They are safe. And the kids that don't feel safe, there are so many different things in place. There's vaccines, there's boosters, there's shields. And I will also I will go out of my way to deliver PPE or anything that a child needs to feel safe in the classroom and be safe because of their mental health condition or medical condition. I will support that 100%. And again, if any child feels that they're being bullied because they're wearing a mask, I will support anything that protects those children, because all children need to be protected. But it's time for these kids to feel safe because they are safe, and it should be mask optional. The one-way masking, as somebody said, the safety around that, the teachers poll that 56% support it. All these things tell me, we're ready for this.
So I know there's some hesitation from those who are concerned about the 28th. And I agree with Greg. It's this is not going away, right? It's going to be like the regular flu. There's a different variant, and every year they're going to tell us to go get your shot because there's a new variant. And they're going to take their best shot unattended at predicting which will be the variant, which will be worse. So now it's shifting gears to how do we live with this, and how do we do the best job we can? Because as we were told, that all the terms that they first used are all gone, right? Herd immunity, all this, nobody uses it anymore because we're over the percentages that they said. If you reach that point, those things are going to go away. It apparently is not going away under any circumstance. We do know you're in a closed area with poor ventilation, people are close to each other. We know for a fact that's how it spreads. So a lot of this is common sense. We have test kits in case people want them upstairs. Schools have them. I'm not suggesting you use it to get out of something you don't want to go to, but yet you use them because if you're going to go visit grandma, grandpa, somebody else, we know what the hospitalization rate is. It's high for those over 75 years or older. Common sense would say, maybe I use that test kit a couple days before and go visit, someone at a party or whatever it might be. So as we shift into that, living with it, right, or I guess coexisting, although I hate to use that word, but it like coexisting with it's part of the shifting of gears that we're at right now. So is there anything that, I know there were some people that were, and I understand it. At Melissa, I think we touched on some of the areas there. I just want to make sure everybody's comfortable, whichever way they go. Anything, I think Brandon commented, made a few comments about it. You know, bullying, I can't see how anybody would bully. We've all been walking around. The whole world's been walking around with masks, face things, head things for the last 2 years. No, I understand. Yeah.
And that's by adults.
Right.
So that's why I brought that up.
I thought I'd seen it all. Then I watched
that's
billions of people walking around with masks, head things, gloves, rubber gloves, Tyvek suits. I thought I saw it all. I've seen it all. I think if anything, hopefully it makes us more tolerant. Like, hey, whatever works for me.
Yeah, my youngest has an exemption, but she will not take her mask off until the other kids in her class can. And that's how I feel like a lot of kids, they would support whoever, maybe it's different at the older, but at the elementary school, they want to support each other, right. And they just want to be social and be able to see each other's smiles again, and just the real basics. The real basics.
Okay, there is a motion and a second on the floor. Anything you want to add there, Mr. Sal?
No, good.
You sure?
Yeah, it's been touched on.
I want you to call me tonight at 1:30 in the morning and ask me.
I'll think about it later.
Right. We have a motion on the floor to eliminate the mandatory mask. That's basically what we're doing, is removing, Greg R., you made the motion. It's to remove the word mandatory, correct?
Correct. That is correct.
Right. So you heard the motion. It was voted on. We had 3 seconds. Any final questions? If not, all in favor of the motion, signify in the usual manner. Those opposed? Okay.
So I have to say yes, because I can't raise my hand, correct?
We couldn't help but to look at you the whole time. Until you went and got Bosco and some crackers. Other than that, we saw that face the whole night. So you hang in there. Don't go anywhere. All right. Thank you, Jeff, Superintendent. Thank you, and all of those that attended. We appreciate it. We've heard, believe me, we've heard from everyone, on every side. We just want to do the right thing. We don't want to see anybody get sick. So the best thing that we could do is take precautions, right? That's the best. Common sense. I can't legislate that. I can't mandate that. Just use common sense. And I don't know if this works or not, but this stuff stinks. And I hope somebody, if kids were smart in school, they'd invent something that smells good.
Soap and water.
Soap and water. I know, but it's not always around.
I know.
Okay, we're going to now move on the review and update school committee powers and duties. So what I did is I brought up the subject last time. I'm trying to get to the point where everyone understands in a short version what our responsibilities are. Many times you'll get a call, you bump into somebody, and it's often sometimes difficult to distinguish that we aren't in charge of certain things within school, that we are members of a school committee, and that gives us our power, right? And so I had a copy of something that came from another school system. Greg had something that he sent to me. So the idea is that at our school committee meetings, there's something either hung behind me or that is part of everybody's packet, something that's on the website, that's consistent, simple. It doesn't have to be 3 pages long on this is what the authority is of the school committee, so people mind. I mean, I've even heard differences of opinion about what our responsibilities are amongst people on the members of the school committee. So I think it would just be something that's consolidated, quick to refer to, and customers and taxpayers and everyone else in between understands what our role and our responsibility is. So I know that Chris had sent me the ones that we're using. So I would ask that the policy committee take the copy that Greg sent me, copy that we took from the Attleboro School District, and what we're already using, and sort of update and modify it.
And MASC has policies and
Clear is the word, right? I'd actually like to hang it right behind us. So that, I also think that, my personal opinion is, these Zoom meetings, although they were treacherous at the very beginning, are very beneficial for people who can't come, just 8 kids running around, somebody they'd like to come home, there's all this stuff. This isn't like the old days where people could, at one time, almost every city council meeting, 2/3 of the chairs down here would be filled. Just people can't do it anymore, so they can watch it at home.
We
But
actually brought that up under new business as something.
it's a nice, good thing that's come out of all this is that people can call from their home where they're comfortable and take their 2 minutes to speak on something that's important to them. I don't know, just I guess things for us as a committee to think about in the future, but it certainly does make it, we're just, I think, moving in the direction and accommodating people as the world changes. It's pretty much what it is. Right? I haven't played a CD or a cassette or a reel-to-reel in a long time. Everything's on my phone. Everything. That's the way of the world. It's just 8-track I did, reel-to-reel. I don't know if you know what those are, but they used to have this thing called reel-to-reel. Okay, so, yes.
So I guess my only thought on this, I think this is good for us to certainly review, and the policy committee can take a look at it. But I guess I would just want to maybe get clarification. I think it's a fine line between personal views that get expressed via social media and the views of the committee, and not not throwing each other to the bus. I mean, our job as the school committee is to support the decisions that are made of the school committee, whether we voted on it or not. At this point, everybody, I think, voted yes for the unmasking. But had there been a different outcome, it's not appropriate for people to attack people or.
No. They're all, somewhere along the line, there'll be things that we don't agree on.
You're not going
But
to agree on lots
we've
of
got to
things.
respect the fact that if it passes,
That's the will of the committee,
that's
and
it.
that's.
And sometimes you're persuasive and you can convince, and it makes sense, or other times you can't. It's just like, right? So I could just respect is respect, right? I mean, that's, you can certainly explain to people, this is how I voted and why. Nothing that stops anybody from doing that, but obviously the will of the committee is the will of the committee.
So are we looking to condense the current handbook?
So what I'm looking for is a reasonably quick. Everything's quick today. If I want to send something or communicate, this is what our responsibilities are. For instance, people show up to the Conservation Commission because they don't want somebody, their neighbor, to build a house, put an addition on. There's no wetlands, there's nothing. They just show up to the Conservation Commission because they think they can. Please don't give them permission. Well, why are you at the Conservation Commission? Well, we're 400 feet from it. We just want to make sure a determination of applicability. We want to make sure we weren't in violation. So all these people show up, and the Conservation Commission has to explain. We don't have any authority. The person was looking to determine whether or not there were any wetlands. And other than that, we have, maybe one of the zoning board of appeals. And I just think that we have to be clear on what it is that we do. Special ed, how many, I don't know how many parents I've talked to didn't know it's the responsibility of the school committee to hire a special ed director. So, right, I'm just saying, so something abbreviated, right to the point, this is what we do. Right?
And I think just in general for people to kind of go over our protocols, and it really just speaks to being respectful of each other, and no surprises, and going things through the chair.
All right. So next we'll go on to resolution purchase electronic message board. So last time, when I was having this conversation about we're trying to hire in the past, put an ad in the paper, maybe the Telegram, the Sentinel, and you get a huge response. That no longer is the case. And we use a message board down in Mechanic Street to promote events in the city. Why? Because we have an email list. We put it on social media. That doesn't get to everybody. So we go back to the old-fashioned way, which is signs, these little boards that we put up, and electronic sign. And the cost of it really has, I think our return on our investment has been probably 10 or 20 times on what we paid for that sign. But I was thinking of ways to help promote the school, help us put out there that we're looking for help, put a positive message up. You can't just put it on our website. You can't just send emails. You can't put it on the radio. You can't just put it in paper. You can't just put a sign up. You can't send home in that backpack with kids got 400 things in it. Expect everybody's going to read it. So I know there are schools that have message boards, and the PTOs generally chipped in and raised money to do it, and then there aren't. But I was thinking that maybe, again, we can't make purchases, but we asked the superintendent to purchase one of these things. We have a trailer that runs by gas, it runs by electricity, and I don't know the last time we even had to do anything to it. It's electronic, so you can type in the message, colors in it, you can share it with schools. But I think getting the message out that we're looking for help. There are places I've been, they're paying for colored billboards on 495 saying, you know, help wanted school department, here are the positions. That's costing tens of thousands of dollars a month to put those ads in. So I don't know how anybody else felt about it. I just wanted to put it out there as to, and I think the superintendent and I both got a communication from a parent last time. One of the schools doesn't have one. I don't know if they're working on raising money for it or whatever, but this wouldn't be somebody doesn't have one and now we're going to get one. This is something we share. Events coming up. Maybe the school's not on the main road. Johnny Appleseed is. Some schools are, some aren't. You know, how do we get a little publicity on something? And
Are
also,
you talking about the city having one for us?
we have
that
one.
we
You would have
utilize?
the school department would have their
our
own.
own. And
then you
is
can
it
move it
something
on.
coming out of our budget? Is that what you're
Yes,
suggesting?
that would be ARPA funds.
I guess I would just want to know if that's something the superintendent is.
We hadn't thought of it, but there are a lot of events that we do ask the city to promote, and we call through the banks, we use their signs for promotion. So if we had our own, that would actually be helpful.
Do we have a place we can put this thing?
Well, if this
Would it be
is mobile, we could put it wherever we want. You know, like kindergarten registration, we'd like to put that one out there.
Yeah.
The big events, things like that. Because we have two electronic signs, one at Skyview and one at Francis Drake. We're trying to convert over to have everybody have an electronic sign because they're very easy to update, you know, minute by minute. It's expensive. But yes, if we had a mobile one, that'd be great.
Would it be like the upkeep, of, like, for you were saying gas and stuff like that? Is that something sustainable?
It
I think
plugs
it's a
in.
wonderful idea. I just want to make sure.
I have it plugged into my lot down there. It's like $70 a month. Costs me to pay for electricity, but that's nothing compared. I don't mind, I have a problem. It's on the main road, but we get a ton of people that see it. Sometimes a little bright. How I know is because sometimes they'll say the message is too bright and it's around the corner you can't see. So I know people are seeing it, but we've used it for everything. And I just think just getting a positive message out to the public. But if you're looking for a specific teacher or a special ed director, you never know who's driving by. You know, it's like 20-something thousand people that drive by Mechanic Street every day.
I think it's good for the city too, when you see school postings,
Yeah.
school stuff, people coming in from out of town seeing that. It's the city looking
Mr. Ron?
To the superintendent or chair, whoever wants to jump on the answer, you say it's expensive. What do you mean by expensive?
The electronic signs that we have at Francis Drake and Skyview, ours are permanent. You know, they belong to the schools. So having all the electrical put in, buying all the components, it's an upfront cost, but then it's easy to manage.
And when you're saying electronics, you know, in Leominster has had problems with their electronics at the lights. When the temperature gets cold, they have trouble. When the temperature gets warm, they have trouble. Am I right? Am I right on that?
Don't run. Just go down Mechanic Street at my pit. It's been sitting there for 2.5 years.
Right over there at the corner, right next to the post office.
Land
also
on this by Carter, right before Carter Park. I think that
right,
one works.
and that one over there next to Carter Park, they've had problems. When they get the temperature
That's just a
changes,
billboard.
the temperature changes.
No, these are pretty modern. I mean, they've taken into consideration that businesses have them, all the banks and stuff.
They look nice. I mean, I see yours.
Yeah, they're not bad. Ours is mounted on a trailer. It's got a gas generator for it. You have to put it somewhere.
And if it's mobile, like
It's mobile,
if
that's
it's a
right.
really bad freeze, you could probably put it
Right.
somewhere.
Just for our events. Yeah.
For the garage at the.
So I guess my thought is kind of the intent. For example, Francis Drake has one, but I tend to know because my kids are at Francis Drake what the Francis Drake event is, and I would think Fallbrook may have the same. So if we're just moving the same portable sign about an event, school location that they already know about it. I don't know if it's worth that cost. If it's for advertising employment, and we want to probably have it in a more centralized area. And I think we should talk about where that area.
You could still have
be.
it downtown saying the high school's play is, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
But we
There's a
have
lot
it
of
one over by the hospital, right?
That's not ours, it's cities.
Oh, those are those big ones,
Yeah.
those huge ones. Well, we do put messages out
Mhm,
there
right.
if there's something going on. But this is not a huge expense anymore. They're really not.
No.
That's what I said. I'm amazed at what we paid for it to get. It's not much. And what feedback we've gotten on it, just because we can't. We sent out code red. French Hill, I guarantee you, snowstorms coming up, there are gonna be people that don't know that you can't park on the street when there's a snowstorm. We bang on doors, leave leaflets, put it in the paper, it's on radio stations, we do code red notifications. And still, we'll have to tow some cars because they're in the way of the plows now. Put it on the message board, at least have a better chance of maybe connecting. That's all. I don't know what the intent is to help better communicate the world that you can't go to one place anymore. You know, you can go to the website, but how many times do you get calls when you say, well, all I had to do is go to the website, you would have found it.
Greg has his hands up on the
Oh,
screen.
I'm sorry, Greg.
That's all right. So just logistically, would the schools need permission from the city on where to put this, or would it be on school grounds? What would happen with that?
But there might, for instance, there might be a student, there might be a parent at Fallbrook who owns a business on Central Street. Says, you know, we got a lawn party coming up, or we got some function coming up. Superintendent, is anybody else? They'll have a rolling list, right? First come, first serve kind of thing. And they say, yeah, I live on Central Street, you can plug this thing, back the truck up, unhook it, and it stays there. Plug it in, and it stays there.
Who would manage it? Would it be the superintendent's office be? Would it be the?
I don't want to decide who's going to use it because
I personally will not be driving.
No,
that.
well, I don't mean
Yeah,
the messaging and such like that. That's going to be posted on.
yeah, somebody's going to have to do it. From the city.
Kyle's putting his head down right now. But Kyle, our tech guy.
It's actually pretty cool because while you're down, you could put messages that are, you know, like pay attention and stuff like that for a couple minutes. Happy birthday and stuff.
So where do you plug it in? You say plug it in. You can't plug it into the ground, right?
I plug it into my service on Mechanic Street. My bill's about $70, $80 a month. I pay for that, but that's not a big deal. So it's an option. There are places where you might not have.
Right.
We could plug it in there.
That's my concern is, are we gonna be able to use it?
But, and it is possible that we could just run another extension cord and move it up a little bit. So
Don't they have some solar
I
power
was just gonna
ones?
say that.
I know. I've seen
Solar
solar
power
ones.
these things are they've got graphics, pictures
Oh,
on it.
yeah, it's
You know,
better
it
graphic.
takes a lot more to run than regular. I mean, you could check into that, but they run both by gas and they run by electricity. And I'm just saying, I bet you've got 6,000 kids in the system.
Mm-hmm.
I'll guarantee you've got parents all over the place that live on main roads that would mind putting it there, or businesses, people that own businesses or work there would say. No, but you might know somebody that lives on a main road somewhere that wouldn't mind, or somebody that owns a business on a main road that says, you know what, put it up for a week or whatever. It's not
So I'll make a motion to have the superintendent and company, you know, look into this and would be in favor, you know, of exploring this as an option. I think it's, you know, certainly sounds like a wonderful tool.
I'll second it.
Okay, any other questions? If not, all in favor? Those opposed? Okay, and then you can explore it and you can check to see what our prices were. John put the whole trailer together upstairs for us, you know, for us. And we got to get it registered and all that. That's not a big deal. Okay, we're now going to move on to approval of the 2023 calendar. If you can believe that. Does anybody have a chance to look at it? Did we make any mistakes? Did we handle all the holidays correctly? I just want to make sure, Chris, the one we always have trouble with is it Rosh Hashanah or one of the holidays?
Oh, we looked at it. Yeah.
Where's Easter on this?
That moves around.
Yeah.
And then Good Friday.
Easter is the 9th.
Yeah, we got Good Friday,
Where's Good Friday on this?
April 7th.
Right, those are never on the same day. They're always moving around. So as long as we have those straight.
I'll make a motion to approve the FY23 calendar.
All right, Brandon, there was a second? All right, a second, thank you.
As long as my third child can have a COVID-free graduation.
Can't guarantee it.
I haven't had one that hasn't had a.
I know. I raised the point now, sometimes I don't recognize people. And then I think sometimes people are happy I don't recognize. I've come to that conclusion. Okay, thank you. All in favor? Those opposed? Thank you. So we've got the calendar. If there are any changes, they'll let us all know. And approval of the minutes, February 7th, 2022. Does everybody have a chance to look at them and review them?
Motion to approve minutes from February 7th, 2022.
All right, by Brandon, and a second. Second by Josh. And any errors, omissions? Okay. If not, all in favor? Those opposed? And now we'll go on to subcommittee reports. Do we have a finance subcommittee report?
Does everybody have a copy?
We do.
Okay, we pass this out.
Sorry, they were a little late, but I've been
No,
meeting to meeting.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, doing the budgeting for next year, so that's been underway, and I've met with every principal so far. Some took longer than others. But they've actually been really productive meetings, and I'm excited to have you meet with them when they present to you guys. So I'm not going to step on any toes to let you know what they're doing or what their projects are. I'll just let you wait and see what they got for you. So just a quick update. We're doing very well. We're coming into March, sitting in a great financial position for the end of the year. We have our usual soft close for principals where we tell them this is your last push to get your purchases in for the end of the year. And so they are doing that now. So you can see that the expense line has dropped down slightly from the last time we met. So it's down to $669,087, which is still a great amount of money to come into the end of the year with. Also, the salary line has stayed steadily. We are down at $411,963. We're actually doing some reclassifications because we're trying to rectify our systems when it comes to our X2 system and Mnasc. So you'll see there might be a couple of more overages than you normally see. Those will all be fixed when we get back into doing our transfers. But right now, I'm just getting our reconciliation done between the two systems. People that were a special education teacher are now a gen ed teacher, and it just wasn't caught in the system. So that's what you're going to see there. Those aren't really that big a deal. The money will be moved and it'll cover it when we do transfers towards the end of usually April or May. Other than that, you can see the bottom line. We've got a little over $1 million to carry us into the end of the year, and it's a really good position. So as for the signs, we did do the sign at Francis Drake, and that one specifically I know was a $40,000 investment for us up front.
How much was it?
$40,000.
Yeah, it didn't cost us as much.
Well, we had to do the electrical,
Right,
which goes underground from the school, so
Yeah,
that
pull
was
that
a good chunk of money. But I do know they enjoy that sign and they use it quite frequently.
Yes.
So it is something that in the up and coming years, we can give serious consideration for the other schools.
The only time I hear any complaining is when you put they put the message about when school opens.
Yeah. I'm sure, kids are loving that. But if you have any questions, let me know on this. Other than that, you've got your revolvings, which are still sitting in a positive position coming into the end of the year. This is money we will be carrying forward. So we can use it in the up and coming next school year for anything that comes up. We've been lucky enough to have quite a bit of ESSER funds that we're able to keep our revolving funds sitting pretty much where they've been.
Melanie, what would be helpful, at least to me,
Yeah.
is sort of a baseline as we get into the budget process.
Yeah.
We settled contracts, and I think we're still negotiating some.
Okay.
So
Sure.
if we can put a cost rather than just here's the salary line from last year, here's the salary line from this year. So we know those extra costs, if there are extra costs. So if it went up to, $32 million to $36 million.
Okay, in reference to?
Salary and wages. So what is the cost of the increase? We settle contracts. What is the cost? In other words, if we have $7 million this year to spend more than we did last year, right off the bat, we've got salary and wages that we've got to put into the budget immediately. We've already agreed on those. We've taken votes.
Understood.
So as we build the budget, it's helpful to know, here's the baseline, but then here are some expenses that went up.
Sure.
oil or gas or
Sure,
whatever.
as long as the bargaining is done and we've settled and it's been voted on, I can include it in my.
Right,
my
if you haven't, then
presentations.
don't include it, but you can kind of think that it might be a certain percentage or
Yeah, yeah.
estimate that, at the end of the year. Then we know what is left in terms of
Contractual, yep.
6%, I don't know, what do we figure for insurance? We're using 6 or 8% or something for,
I think the
I know
previous
you were
years,
higher last.
previous years we've been averaging about 10%.
All right, so whatever, so we just build from there and say,
Yeah.
look, this is where we were and we're at, and then we'll know where those discretionary dollars are so that we can prioritize and make sure that we're putting it in the right places.
Absolutely. Yep, no problem.
Questions for Melanie? Go ahead, Brandon.
One thing that Eileen reminded me of today is this year we waived fees for busing and for athletics and all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
Can we get some information on what that will look like if we decide to do that again? Because I assume we're going to have to make a decision on that for the upcoming school year.
Sure.
I would love to not have to put them back in place now that we've gotten rid of them.
Yeah.
But I'd love to know if that's possible as well.
Right,
So,
athletics would be a
Or-
pull.
Athletics
Yeah,
is
right,
a real
right.
concern. I know the athletic director being on the athletic advisory,
Right.
that was a huge issue, because that is a sizable chunk of their.
It's about
budget.
$100,000 a year.
right, so I just think it would be helpful to have that information as we're
Sure.
looking at budgeting going forward.
Absolutely.
And that's why we have it now, like you're asking for, we know we can make a decision in the budget to say that's something, or if the superintendent says we have ARPA funds, we can continue to use that for 2023 up to 24, but then it's gone, then it's gone.
Yep.
It's a decision, I mean, you might make the decision, yeah, we want to, waive those costs, but at least we'll have it as we build. But we haven't heard from the principals yet. At the end, it's a committee decision, right?
Exactly.
All right, so any questions, Melanie, anybody else on the
Well,
budget?
that's where I was leaning.
Go
about-
ahead, lean.
About the opera fund. Is there a way to make the opera funds, for just for the example, for the athletics, to make it sustainable, so they would, you said you said 2023. Is there a way to make it stretch out to 2024, 25, 26?
No.
Is there a way?
No, they
I'm
go.
just asking, guys.
No, it's up to 2024.
Yeah,
That's done.
the ESSER funds actually have a deadline date,
Dead
and they
date.
dropped
Yeah.
it. Yep.
But is there a way to put something?
We can't save any, but we can try, as the mayor was saying, to include that amount in our budget moving forward, if that's what the committee decides.
So that way it would stay there and it would just.
Carry forward. And we would use
So we
it for
could
that
build on the
specific purpose.
interest. Can we build on the interest?
They would
We
have
don't
to-
have the- we don't have the money.
The only thing, Ron, that I would say is this happens every time. There's always, they'll say, that's it, you can't use the money after 2024. Now, some people didn't spend because they try to hold off and then get the federal government or the state to say, well, we're going to extend it. Or decided they're going to hold on to the money because they'll change what you can use the money for and ended up in trouble. Ended up not being able to use the money. Or they spend money they shouldn't have. Now they have to pay it back.
Right.
What we know right now, and that could change, right, is you got to use it by 2024. What I think Brandon's saying is he'd like to know what that amount is so that maybe I'm not speaking for you, but this year or next year, we use that ARPA funds, but we prepare ourselves that it's a $30,000 or $40,000, whatever it is, amount, and we keep in the back of our minds that if we decide to make it a permanent part of the budget, we can. And so he's asking for that. We'll have it as we go through the budget process. Does that pretty much summarize?
No, that's exactly what I'm asking for. That's part of the budgeting process as we move forward. And
Correct.
I just want to make sure if we're going to make a decision one way or another, we've looked at it well in advance of the day we vote on a budget.
Sure. Yep, absolutely.
It would also help, I think, when we charge fees to ask those that are involved, did it help to engage students that otherwise wouldn't, who didn't have the money to, the family didn't have the money, especially now, we've got inflation, you get the cost of fuel going up,
Well,
it's costing more.
that's where I was leaning towards.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we certainly keep track of that with our principals
Yeah,
in our schools when it comes to clubs.
Right. That would be good to know
We can get a
that.
good information point on that.
We're an urban community.
Transportation's a little bit tougher because, our ridership it is what it is.
I do want to point out that we have always had a policy that students for free and reduced lunch or any family that's experiencing any kind of
shortfalls for whatever reason, that we have accommodated them and not charged them. And that might need a conversation with the building principal or something like that. But just for folks to know out there in the general public, we're not charging right now. But in the past, we always made accommodations for those families who were not capable
Yeah,
for
and we
whatever
don't-
reason.
yeah. We don't know if it's gonna continue, Eileen. We don't know if the school lunches are still gonna be free next
Right.
year. But, you know, the state's doing right by the schools and they're reimbursing at a full rate.
If inflation continues on and the cost of everything,
I'm telling you.
I think
I'll
it's
take
probably
it.
gonna be that we're gonna
If they wanna
continue on.
reimburse with the inflation rate,
Well,
Take it.
And that's actually a cost that we're thinking about, you know, shipping is gone up for us, we're already seeing that.
our vocationals are
You know,
struggling to get product.
Right.
At a
The
reasonable
price
price.
has gone way up.
I mean, lumber alone is double the price it was.
At the last school committee meeting, the second one, we were talking about transportation and the buses. And I remember, I think it was me that asked about the electric buses. Did
Yeah.
anybody look about that?
Yes,
See what-
Butch is looking into that, and I believe he's actually gotten some quotes on it. I can get that for you, Ron. I should have
Not
grabbed that.
just for me, but.
No, for the whole committee,
And would it be cheaper than
No.
the fuels?
They're very expensive.
Very expensive, but in terms for
Gasoline.
maintenance, would it be less maintenance than with the regular buses?
I believe all that, our facilities manager has looked into, Butch, I think he's gotten quotes on prices for, as far as right now. But as far as maintenance, I'm not sure. I'll have to ask him to see if he can look into that too. They are expensive.
Remember we had to pay the $800,000, whatever it was, the bus company wanted because they weren't, up to just regular expenses.
Correct.
At the time, I wasn't thrilled about it, but I get in the long run, have, expenses kind
Yeah.
of making soup when they make, enough of 5 or 20, there's a certain amount of time that goes into it.
Yeah.
I'd asked if they would give us once in a while, give us a report on how many people are actually using our buses. And then I never got one. But it would also be helpful, I think, during the budget process, because at MART, Regional Transportation Authority, they're using smaller buses in areas that just, you see the buses sometimes, there's 10 people on them. That's a good thing during COVID, but when you get back to normal days, you drive these big buses around, going the loop between Leominster and Fitchburg, there's 10 people.
Yeah.
So we're moving more towards these smaller electrified, code-generated, buses. And I don't know, it just seems like a whole lot of parents are bringing their kids to school, so I don't know how many. And so sometimes I look out my window and the one that come up Mechanic Street is pretty full. But then another one that I see it doesn't have that many students on it. So, we're spending a lot of money, millions. Even if we could get a biannual update,
Sure.
January.
Just ridership in general?
Yeah, just how many students are using the buses, or even if you could break it down, I'm sure they know. He said they collected by bus.
I think they're identified by school. As far as the bus company goes, they do tend to take ridership when it comes to the young ones. As far
We'll
as
see what they got.
Yeah.
Any bit data
I'll
they
ask them.
keep, they can share it with us so we know
Sure.
how many people are using these
We
buses.
also might want to survey parents, because parents might not be sending their
Right
kids
now.
right now, but
Right.
that might look very different come September when we don't.
That's
have
why if we had a
Extracurriculars, some season.
Right. But if you had at least a biannual number, twice a year, they tell us this is how many students are using it, you would know somewhere in there, weather related, or, it would at least allow us to know we're spending, $6 million a year on buses and somebody's actually driving them,
They're trying, staff is tough right now.
Is
Anyone
Well,
wants
them
to drive a
driverless
bus?
buses pretty soon.
Is there a law that states what kind of bus you use? What about, what about those shuttle buses? The buses that are shaped like a shuttle.
We have had so many of them.
Right.
They don't fit too many
Well, I'm
students,
just
I
asking,
think.
guys. I mean,
Not to mention we have a contract with the
we're
bus
talking
company.
about- We're talking
That
about
too.
expenses, we're talking about this and that.
Right.
Would it cost less for those shuttle buses?
Well, we're paying a bus company, if we were buying shuttle buses, but we could never support that many shuttle buses and have that many drivers. This year in particular, there's been a
Right.
real shortage of bus drivers.
Yeah, they're having a hard time
They're very
staffing
hard
right
time
now.
filling it, and we have a lot of people who need outside kind of transportation that is very difficult.
In a perfect
Find
world,
people
that would be
do it.
ideal, Ron, but unfortunately, we are under contract and right now.
All the technology's
It's
changing.
an
Ron.
imperfect world.
It's an imperfect world.
No, but the technology's changing, Ron. Down the road, you know, there was a big push at one point for liquefied natural gas, to have things run by that, very clean, no maintenance. Then it moved towards electric cogenerator, you know, electric and run by engine. I mean, I don't know if the grid can handle it all. That's a topic of another discussion, but everybody wants to go to electric. I don't know if the grid can handle it because they're talking brownouts already. They pay us to
Solar
turn
on
our
every
lights
pole.
off
That's
When
right.
my
in the
house-
summer when they have everybody using the grid. So
Say, when I bought my house, oil prices were so high, my house is all electric, and now electric is like awful, and you wish you had oil.
You never know.
Right.
Yep, you never
You
know.
know, so you just never.
anyway,
know.
Yep.
that was just, thank you for that update.
No
That's very
problem.
helpful.
I'll
I
grab
think
that.
you know
and-
where we're going when we're trying to talk about,
Yep.
you know, as we get there, we're not spending a
Yeah,
lot of
please,
time.
if you, and if, don't, you know, feel free, if you have anything in between the meetings that you want me to bring to the meetings, let us know ahead of time and I'll have it prepared.
The big thing will be, this was last year's budget, and we're gonna expect 5% increase based on
Yeah.
the cost of shipping.
There's a lot of
getting
bargaining going
product,
on right now,
Then we
so.
got bargaining,
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah,
point
there's a
we're
lot
at.
going on, so we can't really discuss a lot of that yet, because there's a lot
No,
of
no,
bargaining going
but-
on, but.
But we do have our numbers from the state.
Yes.
We know where our net school spending number is gonna
Correct,
be,
yeah.
so we have an
Yep.
idea. But that isn't the real number, because a lot of that's gonna go towards other areas that are already, we've already committed to when we took votes right here. right?
Health insurance
Yeah,
costs.
exactly. We've already taken votes on those things, so we're obligated to do them. We should know that and be able to communicate that. And so the principals know as well when we're down there.
They
March
know.
7th, we're bringing the elementary principals
Okay.
before you.
All right. Okay,
Thanks,
All
Mel.
right,
thank you, Ellie.
no problem.
And, let's see, Finance Policy Subcommittee,
Well, I've already had our report.
do we have warrants at all?
Not
No.
this time,
Not
next
this
time.
Subcommittees are up to date, action items have been done, new or old business. Let me just thank everybody. Again, I know this was kind of a big issue and it's difficult. It's been difficult for everybody. Everybody wants to do the right thing. But I'm happy with the way the meetings are going. I feel a good vibe here and I enjoy coming to the meetings. Is there anything else? You know, is 6 o'clock still work? And are there other things? I know, Melissa, there were a couple of times you and I communicated about an item that you want to be brought up for discussion. But if there are things along the way, and obviously the superintendent knows that if there are things that need to get on the agenda that she needs to get on here for us to vote on or spend some time on, even if we have to call for a special meeting, we'll do that.
May I ask that the location be moved back to CTI?
I was going to ask the same thing.
Okay,
I would be in
Appreciate that.
support of that
Now that the masks are being dropped on the 28th.
Only if they have cookies.
I can also
At
agree
one
with that.
time, they had cookies there. They used to, and then when we get there, now they're all gone.
Do we need a motion for that?
We'll just go back to the normal. And what about this, what about us using the whole Zoom thing? You want to continue on with that?
Absolutely.
I think it's,
I think
I think it's a
through
wise
April we
idea.
can, and after that, we have to see what the state says, but.
I think that's only for member participation though through Zoom. I don't think that.
We could use it forever.
We can use have the public involved that way as long as we
But
want.
just as far as members.
We're just going to be more flexible and it works. Look at, Greg hasn't blinked in 2 hours.
It's a cardboard cutout.
I'm gonna say policy till 5:15.
Okay, that's fine, as long as it works for you. So any other issues that you would like to deal with? The budget's gonna take up some time, but are there any other issues? Just email me and we'll get them on the agenda. You want to explain, Melissa? You want to spend a minute? You have time. On the issue that you and I talked about.
So, we are now as a majority minority community. We are now, when we look at the statistics of our schools, a majority minority school district. And some parents have brought to our attention that we are primarily a body of Caucasian individuals making decisions about minority students and their families. So some school districts are going as far as hiring consultants or individuals that help advocate for those families. But I think as a committee, I would like us all to possibly attend some trainings or in-service about
Cultural sensitivity?
Cultural sensitivity, right, exactly. And not that anyone here is making any decisions consciously. I don't feel,
You're not saying there's a problem.
I'm
It's
not
just more
saying, I'm not
awareness.
saying that there's a conscious problem, but I want to make sure that we're making, right, decisions that are in everyone's best interest and are conscious of those populations that we may not be reflecting.
Well, is there like a community leader or somebody in there that might want to be a part of our meetings and make public comments or anything like that?
So I don't know of a specific community leader, but I would think even just Fitchburg State has an amazing education program. I would think they must have someone that even could do some trainings. I know there's some community members.
Even if it's something that does like a monthly report, I don't want to say report, but something to give us what's going on or whatever their concerns are that they can address and they want to address with us or something like that.
I'd love to hear as a whole, if they feel like we're not addressing, if we're not prioritizing certain things over, these are the things that I think that we should understand so that we can all maybe collectively, I know that they're coming to you because you're a great advocate for them. But we want to be advocates as well, and we'd love to have somebody in the community that is willing to come forth and put themselves out there and express how they feel so that we can get it better.
And to your point, you say they're hiring people, but who's the best people other than the people already in our community?
Right, that's what I say.
Yeah, they're already in our community. They know what's going on out there. They're the ones that are going to be able to explain to us better than hiring anyone.
So I think it depends on how we look at it.
Yeah.
Is it just a representative that's going to be speaking to us, or is it like a training on cultural bias?
Yeah.
And what
Which is good too.
So it could be.
And I
right.
think that kind of goes to, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, when my daughter did the whole training on autism and everything, so we had professional people saying to us, I always thought that kid was just misbehaving. And after they got the training, they were like, wow, it's like their problem now. Like, they can train the trainers, they can train other people and say, take it easy. Kid's having a meltdown, leave him alone, it'll be okay. So any way I can help, blah, 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 whatever.
Even if you look at some of our schools, there are some like issues with our certain kids being targeted for expulsion or suspension at higher rates than others. And if our administration needs to make decisions, I think we need to be able to understand.
A couple of years ago, we had a great speaker at the MASC conference that spoke to these very issues. So I'm wondering if we can tap into that. There's also a ton of TED Talks, which are, very short sound bites of diversity. I just listened to one today to really help people take a look at their sort of unpacking their white fragility.
And I think that goes to some of the things that we were talking about prior to the start of the meeting, about, translational services for our meetings so we can make them more accessible to just the room full of people who are speaking English. We all know that not everybody's primary language or the language they understand best is English. So if there's some way we can kind of include that in our meetings, I think we'll be able to attract more people to attend these meetings because they'll actually be able to understand them.
There must be a translation through cable TV, what comes out on the audio, and also the Zoom meetings, right? There must be a way to translate that.
I would have
add-ons with Zoom, I think.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that used before. So, maybe those are options we can start tapping into as well.
Or even just through the LPAC.
Yeah, that lady who gave us that talk. That lady from North Carolina or
Eileen?
I don't know her, forget her name.
From Attuned?
She was on the Zoom.
Yeah.
She gave us a presentation, right?
Yes. She's presenting on the 7th again to you.
Here.
There, here.
Okay. When she did. Go ahead, you can laugh at me.
No, I was referring to that there.
But with her presentation, can you ask her to split the difference to show us?
It's in there.
Where
we're actually.
Where we're hurting.
Yeah, we're hurting in the areas of addressing students of color and ethnicity. It's very clear, and you'll see it in her data on the 7th. So we're doing a lot of work around that, and a lot of reprogramming and restructuring, and a lot of our budget has to go towards those being major goals for us addressing. Our curricular products have to be more culturally sensitive. We've actually been studying this for about 3 years. 2 years ago, 1 year ago, I've lost track. We brought Dr. Brown. We flew him in. He hammered us. We do book studies with all our principals. We're retraining. It's a tough subject, and people used to say, you know, these were difficult conversations. They've now become critical conversations because if you look at the data, it screams discrepancy.
When you say it's difficult data, or difficult situation, I'm not trying to play Pollyanna. But can you give us examples of where the difficulties are?
Sure, you can look at the achievement of students of color versus the aggregate, the typical white student. We have to segregate all that data, and who are the most achieving and who are not, who's underserved. And so we have to do a better job of making sure we address every population. Many of the materials now that we're purchasing have a cultural piece to them. So it's something that just flies by you, that you're not even conscious that it's there. But it's so prevalent when you stop and look at data. It's in our everyday data, our suspension data, our special education data, the number of referrals that are going through. So it's actually something that we are facing right now. It's not something that's up and coming. It's here.
So the other thing I heard that Sal brought up is who better, and I think this is a multi kind of.
Yeah, it's not a one and done.
So, but one of the things Sal said, and that resonates with me, is we have members of our community, from the Haitian community, Ghana, Latinos. We have excellent representation. That, you know, when we first started moving the school committee meetings to different schools, it was to try to make it so that it's everybody's comfort zone. And then I think we even drilled down even further at some of the schools to try to have like a special night when people would bring their friends that typically wouldn't come because maybe it was a language barrier. So we find, you know, parents and say, oh, can you bring some people? We'll sit down, we'll sit around the table, you can talk about what goes on in your house, how we can help, you know, those sorts of things. So I think it's more than just maybe one speaker. I think it's a bunch of things that at the end of the day make sense because we're serving a changing community. It's the value of our communities is always changing. It isn't French, Italian, Latino anymore. It isn't just Irish. It's not 4 cultures anymore. It's a variety, and we just kind of got to make sure that we're in my cell phone.
If I may, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a committee, a subcommittee that really just addresses inclusivity, diversity, and equity. A group that's looking at that for us.
I think that's great.
Do we know if that's something that's going to be coming out of the 2 presentation, and I just kind of.
I mean, it was in the data that we had already gotten in the last.
But we have new members.
Yeah, no.
So this is the follow-up. So this is the growth since what 2 or 3 months ago. Brandon is on the steering committee, so they do a pretty in-depth presentation.
But the new members.
Yes.
Maybe I'm wrong.
We'll catch them up and then move on.
They had the initial presentation because I sent it to them.
Okay, all right.
No, I made sure.
That lady on the
Yes,
Zoom?
they had it.
And the papers that she said,
Yes.
There was a couple of spots on there that, and I kept on going back to it. And those were like the hanging points.
She'll be doing the exact same thing. These partnerships, they don't mince words. Let's just say that. So it's nice to have the objective view.
And the last thing I'll say, and then go to Greg, is our police department and our fire department are very diverse.
Yeah.
It's a good resource to have in the city to be able to have a very, very diverse police and fire department. And that I think you can use as assistance in what we're trying to do. They're parents, they speak to parents, they're involved in different, you know, groups in the community, religious groups where, and so we have a whole lot of resources. We've just got to kind of decide where to start. And so let's get a report from there, and then we'll go from there, listen to what the report is, and we'll decide what the next step is.
And Melissa, we're also looking to develop a position next year for someone to really direct and keep that flow going.
Great.
Yeah. So what I would add to that is I love the idea of including the community. I think that, you know, to the points about expulsion, suspension, and disproportionately happening in minority community and special education. I've seen the data; it's there, right? Especially in special ed, and I think we have to not just make assumptions for our community based on what somebody from the outside comes in and says, this is what we should do. We need to understand what is, like, maybe there are more violent instances, why there's more severe penalties. I don't know, but it's better that we understand what the root cause of some of these things are and help our community with whatever those struggles are. Maybe it's more support at home, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But I think the best way to kind of tackle, that equity piece is to involve aspects of our community. So bringing in community leaders, bringing in students, really understanding what their kind of feelings are. But I'll be interested to see what Attune has to say. I'll be honest that they're looking at their website. It's a little concerning, some of the things that they're saying.
But at the same time, and we'll conclude this, there's a difference between someone who's disturbing the class intentionally. And that's one of the issues that we hear at our Mayor's Youth Council is that they feel that, and I don't want to speak for them, but they've said it, is that there's a lot, not a lot, but within the classrooms, some schools, there are things that go on that are beyond a learning disability or ethnic sort of thing. And they feel as though that takes away from their education because they can't concentrate on learning. They want to show up to learn. And so that's a whole separate issue. And I think we took that issue on before. Pittsburgh has another program that's like a night program. We took it on. So those are all things that we can discuss. We're not going to solve them tonight, but there's certain things that we can discuss. And but for tonight, so we agree that that sounds like something we want to sort of get ourselves involved in.
Yes.
We want to wait for that presentation in March, and at the end of the presentation, we'll decide where to go from there. Who's the next speaker? We talked to the Spanish American Center, have them come in. They're really in touch with the community, not just Latino and Spanish. It's the real Spanish American Center, but they serve everyone. So we can go all over. We have great community resources, and I think you're right. It's a matter of sometimes, Taconian said, you didn't ask, right? How come you never asked, right? Well, we'll ask, right? How can we do a better job? And that's not even mentioning the fact that most parents can't help their kids with whatever less they come home with. Imagine a language barrier of some sort. Okay, so we've agreed on that. Okay, anything else in the new or old business? New or old business?
There will be a prom.
Yes, there'll be a prom. Nice, awesome, things are looking good. Okay, if there's no other further business, no executive sessions, is there a motion to adjourn? No? Okay, stay here if you want.
No.
A motion to adjourn.
I'll make a
So
motion.
Sounds great. Thank you, everyone. Have a good week. For
you.
2 weeks, it will go by quick. I know it's already March.